Another big part of it that people didn't see in Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, that we delve deeply into in Eberron Rising from the Last War, is this new concept we call group patrons.
Yes, this interests me a great deal.
So we've known since we were originally playtesting 5th edition that people really love the concept of having a background for their character. It's really nice to be able to write on your character sheet, I was a criminal, I was an acolyte, I was a sage, something that points to who was I before I became an adventurer. We also know that every campaign starts with some version of Session 0 where people are trying to figure out, well, what brought our individuals together? Mm-hmm. What unites us as a group? And one of the things we decided to explore in Eberron is this idea of having essentially a group background. And in Eberron we call it a group patron because Eberron is filled with various organizations that wield great power to different degrees and power of different types. And these organizations can provide a powerful motivation for adventure and provide a number of ready-made reasons for a group of adventurers to be together. And so in the book, we provide a number of examples of different group patrons your group could have, and then we flesh out what different roles the members of your group might have working for this organization. Here's some examples. Eberron has newspapers, and so one of the possible group patron is a newspaper. Your group could actually be a group of reporters or bodyguards or fact checkers who are going out into the world basically trying to get the latest scoop for a newspaper like the Korenberg Chronicle or one of the other newspapers in the world. And that right there could form the seed for an entire campaign. We have others. You could be a member of a military organization. You might have fought together, your group of adventurers, you might have fought together in the last war, and essentially you're now a group of veterans trying to make your way in this new world order. You could all be members of a religious organization. You could be Templars of the Silver Flame, for instance, and are out in the world carrying out the mission of your faith. On and on. We provide a number of broad examples like newspaper, university, that's another one of them because Eberron has a number of universities. But then we also give you a specific example grounded in the world of Eberron, and at the same time use that as a way to tell you about that organization. So we tell you all about Moorgrave University, for instance, in the group patron section because you might be staff members of the university. Sort of you could be Indiana Jones style archaeologists working for the university, professors, librarians, and others headed out into the world to find lost artifacts that might be in the rubble following the last war. I think people are really going to love this group patron concept. It is in addition to your individual background, so everyone will still choose what the past was of their character, but then get to unite together under the banner of whatever patron the group chooses.
I'm gonna love that. But I'm always for more backgrounds in D&D or more background flavor that you can choose and have some influence. Like you will gain, depending on who your patron is, some advantage. Correct? Yeah. Whether it's income or it's maybe some items, perhaps?
So just as the backgrounds in the player's handbook give the person who has that background a feature of some sort, each group patron gives your group, essentially it's like a class feature, but it's for your whole group. And we also give you guidelines for how you can make money working for your patron, what the expectations are, the types of missions you might be sent on, the kind of trouble you might get into because you work for this particular patron. We also give you guidelines for several of them on essentially becoming your own patron. For example, one of the group patrons is a crime syndicate. You could be a part of an established crime syndicate, or you could make your own.
I like this.
And so we give you a number of different ways to interact with this group patron concept. No matter how you decide to engage with it, the idea is this is just one more tool your group has to tell your story. And I hope that people will see what we've provided in the group patron section. And there's a lot of information. The section on group patrons is almost 40 pages long. And I hope people will make their own. And then maybe even take some of these ideas and riff on them in other D&D worlds.
So the patron system is really like, given that there is so much intrigue in Eberron, this makes a lot of sense to have like all these different organizations or individuals who are like willing to hire adventurers to do something.
Yes, it's fundamentally a group building tool that doesn't carry a lot of weight. It's almost like an additional background.
Yeah.
Where you get some perks because of your patron, like you might get a salary.
I'm always down for extra gold. So
it's not a lot. So
well.
you're still going to want to delve into ancient ruins and stuff
I think
like
you
that.
made some cheap patrons. But that's like great.
Newspaper reporters.
Yeah. But I like the idea of having an additional background.
Yes.
Like that concept I very much enjoy. Or someone that you are semi-beholden to.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be an obsessive fan of warlocks if I wasn't interested in that give and take of power and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are certainly things that are less mundane than newspaper reporting. Like
Yeah, I hope so. So who
one
else
of them
can you...
is Immortal Being, where we fleshed out the mother of the daughters of Sorakel, who ruled the monstrous nation of Droam, who is, again, a mysterious, probably hag-like being. But you might have a different immortal patron, including like the Draconic Prophecy. It doesn't talk to you or give you things to do, but it's a force that is driving what your adventurers are doing.
Well, tell me about that. That's fascinating. What is the Draconic Prophecy?
So the Draconic Prophecy is this mysterious collection of foreboding. It describes things that might happen, conditions that might cause things to happen, things that could happen in many different ways depending on how you interpret that. So there are different forces in the world who are interested in fulfilling the Draconic Prophecy in a variety of ways. That is primarily a conflict between certain members of the dragons and the Lords of Dust, those fiendish overlords, and their servants. So many of those fiendish overlords might be very interested in fulfilling a prophecy in such a way that means my master's getting out. Whereas the dragons are very interested in making sure that it's fulfilled in a way that doesn't mean that. And the prophecy is flexible enough to make that a point of conflict rather than just something that's going to happen.
Your knowledge of these prophecies are like a background then. So
they can be.
You know, is that what it is? Like when you say your patron is the Draconic Prophecies, what does that mean?
That basically means at least one member of your party has some hook in to the Draconic Prophecy. Or it could be that your group is dedicated to finding places where it's inscribed on the mountainsides or hidden in a crystal deep in the Underdark that you find. So in all seriousness, my trilogy of Eberron novels called The Draconic Prophecy, the main character in that story had sort of an unconscious connection to words of the Draconic Prophecy. He had a dragon mark of Sybaris, the sort of weird kind of dragon mark that people don't quite trust, and that gave him a hook in to the prophecy. So a lot of that trilogy is all about how is this going to be fulfilled.
What I find fascinating about that when it comes to like that kind of being one of the patrons is that like if you're in the prophecy, then you're in. It's almost like is it philosophical or spiritual or it's like being made, right? Like you're just like you are part of this mafia of prophecies. Like you have no choice.
Yeah.
Like you are part of this story now. And you have to see this through. That's kind of a fascinating patron of sorts.
Yes. In a way, we're choosing to be part of this story.
Right.
looking back at my novels again, the first one called Storm Dragon, the driving force in that was a dragon who was convinced that he was the Storm Dragon. He was going to fulfill the prophecies about this Storm Dragon, but it turned out differently than that, where the protagonist, who had the Sybaris mark of Storm, was the Storm Dragon and made those prophecies happen in an unexpected way.
That's a very tricky thing about prophecy.